What is up, everyone? It is your boy Winster, and I'm back at it again with another video. Today is a phenomenal day. Today, we're going to be talking about the best decks going into this new format. Ban list just dropped. September 25th is the date that is going to take effect. So we're going to talk about the decks that you should be looking out for and some of the decks that maybe you shouldn't be fucking touching at all. If you guys like this type of content, make sure you guys drop a subscribe and turn on the notification bell. But let's go ahead and jump into today's video. Let's talk about it. We got the decks. We got 11 in total. Now, there are definitely a couple of other decks that I did miss, but I think these are the decks that really stood out the most to me. Everyone's favorite top tier 0 deck, Tearlament. I definitely think that Tearlament is still a very, very strong strategy. I think what's keeping it alive is the sweat that the people get when they're looking at the tier cards. The sweat that they get from all the perspiring. They get so nervous around a girl, right? I think that is the energy that's keeping this deck alive. There's definitely a lot of copium. There's a lot of horny boys. And look, I'm with it. You know, there's no shame in your game, baby. Still a very popular strategy. Take a look at the OCG. A lot of this deck got fucking butchered. And it's still a very strong and popular deck. And the same thing could be said here. Now that a Rice Heart is gone, I do think that this deck could flourish a lot more. And it has a lot of capability considering what people are running to go in. The King of the Swamp, the polymerizations. I definitely still think that the deck is actually pretty strong. And I wouldn't be surprised if we see this deck win some sort of event. Is it capable of winning like championships? I don't think so, but do not count this deck out. I definitely think it's fully capable of placing very consistent. I will put this in a tier 2. So let's go ahead and talk about one of my favorite decks. Now, this is, I know it just has the picture of the Chimera monster, but this is like branded Chimera, branded Despia. I still think that the deck is very weak to hand traps and is very prone. And I think that's one of the reasons why maybe Ash Blossom is still popular in the format, because one card could literally stop this deck. However, now that Branded has another engine other than Despia, because the Despia engine is very lackluster compared to the Branded strategy, being able to play the illusion cards, those are all really strong cards. And on top of that, it's a very small package and it's a very consistent package. So being able to play that with like Branded is a very strong strategy. And I definitely think that it allows it to at least be a little bit more consistent, but it still loses to Ash. Is it capable of winning events? I think so. Is it very consistent now that the illusion cards are out? I would think so, but it's very weak, doesn't have a very strong negate, but I definitely think it has evolved a lot better. And I think that the illusion cards make the deck a lot more consistent and allowing it to have 2 engines. So I do think that it is a tier 2 deck. Salamangreat. Shout out to all the people who stuck by this deck for years, man. Since Salamangreat Gazelle got unbanned or unlimited, man, I have seen nothing but great things. I do think that the age of the deck is starting to show when comparing this deck to others like Labyrinth, like Purely, like Sprite, Unchained. The deck is showing its age, but it has a lot of support that just recently came out and very strong support. That the support for the deck does knock it up a couple of tiers. I definitely think that it went to a very, very rogue strategy to possibly keeping up with the upper decks. I do think it's capable of winning locals, maybe talking at a smaller regional. I do think the deck has a lot of things going for it. And there's a lot of copium and a lot of fans of the deck. And it's interesting. It's going to be interesting seeing how this deck is going to be evolved to at least keep up with these other decks. And because of that, I definitely think it's like a tier 3 deck. Let's get into the fucking Labyrinth, bro. Mommy Milkers. Labyrinth. What can I say? Honestly, what can I say? This deck runs Eradicator Epidemic, runs Skill Drain, runs every fucking floodgate imaginable, right? Has amazing support coming out for it. Like, Lab is such a strong deck. And yes, one would argue it's a trap deck. It's going to be slower. But it doesn't matter when the traps are going to slow you the fuck down. And it's $3. It makes it that much more accessible. I would say that this deck has potential. And we've seen it consistently placed. I would argue and say that it's tier 1. Let's talk about one of my personal favorite decks, Rocket Dragon Link. This deck actually got hit on the current format, the most recent one. It got hit with the Magnamut, the Bestial, went from 3 to 1. And Chaos Space, a very powerful card in the strategy, went from 3 to 1 as well. Now, do those two recent hits on the deck make the deck unplayable? No, it did not make the deck unplayable. Yes, it made it less consistent. Now, where this deck does lack is in the same area as like the Silent Great strategy. Now, let me explain. It does summon a shit ton of monsters, and it takes a long time to reach its end board. And one big Nibiru boy could come through and just pull up and say, fuck you, right? However, the Dragon League being a very resourceful deck, has a lot of chances to rebuild that board, even off of Nibiru. There's just so much that this deck could play through, and I think that's what makes it so consistent. Is it a tier 1 deck? I personally don't think so. Is it a tier 2 deck and maybe the best tier 2 deck? I would think so. Rika, man, I'm gonna be honest. I do not like playing against this deck. Rika is such a strong deck. And I'm gonna be honest, I don't think I've ever beaten this deck. This deck is too strong for me. It's too many plays, too much follow-up. I definitely think it's a really, really strong deck, but I definitely think that it loses to a popular hand trap being Droll. I definitely see this deck being tier 2. I don't see this deck being tier 1, even though it's consistently placing. I think this is the second best deck in tier 2. It's right behind Dragon Link. It has the same kind of problems as Dragon Link and Silent Great. Just puts crazy amount of bodies on the board and just be able to extend. Can play through several hand traps. Ends on a pretty insane board. I definitely think that this deck has great removal as well, tributing your monster's effects or your opponent's monsters for cost. There's just so much going for it, and I definitely think that it is a tier 2 deck. Unchained. This deck, fucking crazy. It is a crazy fucking deck. I played it a couple of times at my locals. I recently went, and it was a pretty big local. I think it was like 30-something people. Ended up getting third there. And I played against a Unchained, right? I've never seen a board just get broken apart like mine did that day. My man linked away my Dragoon, got rid of all my other monsters. I was just like, bro, this deck is insane. I would argue and say that it's currently the best deck in the format. I would say that it's the best deck in the format. Tier 1 for sure. It's just crazy to me. Yes, like, Goddess of the Underworld existed way before you were able to link off Dragoon, but the ease that they do it with is just insane to me. Definitely tier 1 for sure. Let's go ahead and jump right into Rescue Ace. I definitely think it's a very strong deck, just like the end boards, I think all the traps that they set. I want to see more. Again, I haven't seen too much of this deck, but what I have seen is people just literally scooping against it and unable to break the board. I think it's a very popular strategy as well, and has some upcoming support and Age of Overlord. So I would say that this deck would probably go into tier 2. Definitely think that it's better than Branded Chimera. I miss the good old days when you used to have Elf, end on Totally Awesome. Man, those were the good times, right? And it was crazy. People weren't even considering to play Smashers. And look at us now. This deck has gone through so many changes over the release. I'm shocked that it's still as consistent. JK, not really, because this deck, even though it ends on very minuscule monsters, right? Red, Carrot, Bryn, Bright, Double Cross, right? There's so many cards, so many interruptions, and it's so simple to get. It did get hit on not the most recent ban list, but before that with Sprite Starter. But this deck is still capable to be Splash, and I think that is what makes the deck really strong. It's just so versatile. Sprite Live Twin, Runic Sprite. There's just so many places where you could actually play this deck, and it's just still consistent. So I would say that this deck is right in the tier 2 slot. Pearly, my god, man, this deck is so good. I think I've only able to beat it one time, and it wasn't even because of anything crazy. I won for time because my opponent just couldn't out my board, and he bricked. And on top of that, I was able to, get him on life points because he ended up paying for activating the spell. Pearly Noir, my god, unaffected by activated monster effects or card effects. Like, come on, that is too fucking strong. I get it, it has to have 5 materials on it, but that's what the deck does. Like, the deck adds more materials on top of it to continue to exceed and do everything. So I definitely think that this deck is going to be tier 1. Yes, a kaiju would hurt, but it's just so consistent, man. Like, the ability to always just raid a body unaffected by anything, right? And on top of that, like, not a lot of people are playing kaijus in the main. This is probably the second best deck in the format. It's just so consistent, being unaffected by card effects. It's just crazy to me. It's just crazy, honestly. But Mandium, I think that this deck has actually a lot of potential. It has upcoming support. I think it's going to be the new Fallen of Albas archetype, and what I mean by that, it's just going to have a lot of upcoming support for it, even after Age of Overlord. Only time can tell how the deck is actually going to, develop in the current format, but it has a lot of potential. Right now, I would say that it's just kind of a blend of monsters, because your end board is the same thing as like Rocket Dragon Link, where they're going to end on Despater, the Barone, some sort of negate, back row. Right? I think it's going to be a very strong deck. It just needs a little bit more support, because it does get stopped pretty easy. I think in the times I've played against the deck were I think like 5-6 times, and those 5-6 times at multiple locals, I dropped the draw and they literally just passed turn. And it sucks, because I do think that it has pretty sick art, but it cannot play through hand traps. And even Nibiru, right? I seen it not even being able to play through that. So I would even say it's worse than tier, because it's just so fragile. I would argue and say that it's currently tier 3. Yes, they do have crazy end boards, but you have to get to that point to get to the end board without being interrupted. In today's format, I would say it's more than likely going to get interrupted. But guys, this is going to be the end of the tier list. Let me know what you guys think. There are some missing candidates, but like I said earlier, hopefully we get to see them in the future. That way we could, make a better judgment. But let me know what you guys think. Do you guys agree with my tier list? Do you guys not agree with my tier list? I think the format is obviously brand new. It just started yesterday from the making of this video. But let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Turn on the notification bell. Check out my other social media platforms in the description box, but I will check you guys out later. My name is Winster. You guys have a good rest of your day. Peace out. Branded Fusion to 1.